Hi there, this is Tim with the Planet Coaster video, and in this video it is a time-lapse video of me building Wheatley Park, which is a sandbox park that I've been building. You can see I started off here doing the terrain, cut myself some channels that I wanted to use for rides and things. First thing that I put in was my kind of main coaster. This one kind of is the centerpiece of the park, really. You can see it started off at the top of the land and then went into the channel that I had dug. And you can see it was all done freehand. There was no kind of automation. I had to redo the last bit of it here a few times to kind of get it so that the excitement level stayed and that it made it all the way back, obviously. Then I filled in some of the space so that the coaster would end up being underground rather than just in a big channel. Made my main pathways and filled in a little bit more of the land. Made it a little bit more interesting, basically. Okay, there are the lines placed. And that's the coaster done. Now I moved on to a little bit of the decoration around this ride. And that's basically what I've done with the whole park, is that I've placed a ride and then I've obviously put decoration around it, piece by piece. Using variations of trees. That's all kind of fit into the setting that I chose, which is kind of a mountainous location. And even though the park land itself starts off flat, obviously like you saw, you know, you can dig into it, you can create kind of land masses over the top of rides and things like that, so it can be quite interesting. Now in the lower level here you can see I put a lot of the smaller kind of bushes and shrubs. Didn't use any trees down at that lower level. Put some water down there as well. Made things as interesting as possible. Now everybody quite likes the ride. There are some locations where it was a little bit fast, so the nausea was at 2.69 though, so I was fairly pleased with that. Next thing I did is I started building kind of the castle and fantasy location nearby. You can see I put a kind of a tower there. Made kind of a land bridge over to it, and then I started building a castle that I still haven't finished yet, but this is the point that I actually did it. You can see how easy it is to put things together, modify things. Just really such a good game for that. It's so easy to personalize your park. Placed a few buildings kind of outside the castle wall. Lined things with shrubs, obviously, to make everything look natural again. And put a ride in that location there where I'd built kind of a little shelf. And then I filled in the top of it so that it's like the ride is in a cave. Turned out to be quite a cool location. And then I put another ride down there in the bottom of a cave, a layer lower than that other ride, and then filled in that one too. Started thinking about some other locations for rides. Joined up the pathways there as well, as you could see. Change the colour of my coaster to be white instead of the default orange. And put some pathway lighting, especially useful down in that cave section. Personalised a few buildings, changing the colours, changing the actual stores that are inside them. Made a new kind of ATM there. You can see water effects and things down in that lower level. And right now I'm actually placing a few spotlights so that at night time there's some quite nice lighting for the ride. Still haven't really built more than my main coaster and a few of the pre-placed rides, so I figured it was time to start playing around with something else. Now the first thing I tried to do was this water ride there. I actually deleted that, gave up on that, moved on to some of these other rides here. Obviously those are pre-built rides. And then once that was done, I moved on to the log flume, which I built around this dug out area. Got some quite nice scores, but I did kind of have a do-over because I wasn't really satisfied with them. And then I did a lot of the terrain work around. Again, I do this kind of main ride by main ride, trying to make things look a lot more natural, or as natural as I possibly can. Kind of like the land was always like that. Instead of me building the ride first and then making the land that way. I want it to look like I had to kind of build the ride around these mountains. Usually I do a test at day with daylight and then a test at night. Just make sure that everything works. And here I did place a few of the pirate objects. Later removed them actually, but I left it in the time lapse anyway. I ended up not feeling like they kind of fitted very well. Now I actually blocked off the log flume ride with some of those modern wooden walls. And then here you can see me building a monorail for transportation. And there's more of those modern wooden walls. Obviously line the inside and outside with natural looking trees. And over near the fantasy section, where there was that tower, I put a witch there, kind of like she's casting spells on the tower to keep a princess kind of trapped in there or something. That was the idea. So you can see kind of a series of flames and things going over there. And then more of the modern walls, just to separate the log flume from everything else a little bit. And then this is my first actual attempt at building a building in the game. Really wasn't that difficult. I just had to figure out which pieces did what and at what angle. I probably could have done a lot more than I did, but I actually liked how it turned out. It's got a little kind of fenced off area, and then I put what I assume is kind of Venus or a mermaid or something like that, kind of sat on top of it, and then decorated it with various kind of bushes and flowers and things like that. And I think it ended up looking quite nice. And a few more pathways. So now I'm going back to the this water ride here, and I wanted this to be quite a long ride, so as you can see it ended up being a very, very, very long ride. Made effective use of the channels and things there, and it has a lot of I don't know what you would call them, cars that can all go around at the same time. Then I did a lot of terrain work, made various tunnels and things like that by obviously covering the ride up. Made it look like it was a natural kind of part of the landscape. I've been quite lucky really with a lot of the rides that I've made, all these major rides, because the scores have actually been really good. Decent amount of excitement, low levels of nausea. So just trying to make things look a lot more natural now, placing of trees again. Ended up placing some water too. And then eventually I started trying for some decoration. Used the kind of standard monster here that I set up a trigger for, so that when they got to a certain point on the track, it would try to jump out and scare them. Made some connecting pathways here, kind of from one side of the log flume to the other, and then tried to make it look like it was, again, a natural part of the landscape by making a few land bridges for it to be supported by. And a few more of the pre-made rides, and queue placements and things like that. Now this is another transport ride. It's the kind of the steam train. I did end up deleting this route, I believe, and redoing it. But not before kind of digging out a huge section, because I was going to make a big sort of pirate theme area, and basically I wanted to make a big lake for that, so that's what you see me digging out here. Placed a few pirate objects and things like that in it, and the idea was that the transport ride would be one of the only ways that you could see it up close, but I ended up kind of not liking the look of what I ended up with, and just removed it. I'm not really sure that the pirate theme stuff really fits into this mountain location that I'm actually building the park. And unfortunately you can't change the terrain. You can't kind of paint the grass to be sand and things like that. So if I wanted to do kind of a desert island kind of theme, you know, I can't really do that with this starting map. So here you see me doing the transport train route again, and this is the one that I stayed with. You can see it actually goes over a lot of the other rides and things, and I really like the way that the bridges look with the nice kind of wooden supports and things like that. And after that I built myself a wooden coaster, which I feel like I did quite a good job with this. Again, it's another kind of free-form coaster, but it was done by hand. It wasn't one of the pre-made ones. You can see me, you know, trying to perfect it and make sure that the momentum is right and things. And again, I got really good scores for it, so quite happy again. And then you can see me doing a lot of terrain work around again. Trying to make it look like the terrain came first, which it obviously didn't. Placed a few more rides, and then it was time to place the trees again. Just around this one ride, obviously. This wooden coaster ended up with some really nice kind of tunnels and kind of natural looking surroundings, with a nice lake next to it as well. And then placing another coaster here, a little bit of a faster one. I don't feel like this is kind of a main attraction for the park. It's probably going to have a very select crowd. It's got a bit of a higher nausea rating than most of the other rides in the park. But you can see I actually restarted again and basically started over, and ended up with what is actually a quite decent ride. It's just a bit heavy on the excitement, really. And then again, did a lot of the terrain work and placed a few objects. And now we've come to placing some of the stores. Still going with the kind of fairy tale location theme. Decided against using most of the kind of pirate theme stuff. Even though when I started doing the map, that was almost going to be like my target thing to use. I liked a lot of the fairy tale stuff in the end. Placing a few more bushes and things now. You can really make the trees that you've placed look a lot more natural if you kind of vary them and stick a few different kinds of trees in there. And just dressing up different locations now, rather randomly. Especially around the transport ride. Again, you know, I want this to almost seem like all of the terrain is natural terrain, all of the trees were there before I built the rides, even though they weren't. Anyway, I hope that's interesting so far. This is obviously just the first video, and I'm going to post some videos actually showing the rides being ridden. I hope you'll find those interesting. Thanks. Bye. Bye.